In this video, we're going to talk about all things charge port related. So let's talk for a minute about what exactly a charge port does. Well, a charge port's job is to charge the device's battery. In addition to this, it also is responsible for transferring data. So how exactly does this work? Well, there's actually a number of pins on the charge port itself. If you look at this image right here, you can see all of the little gold lines. Those are the pins. Each of these pins has their own job and purpose. Some of the pins are responsible for pulling an electrical current, and some pins are responsible for data transfer. Charge ports may also have other components on them, such as mics and antennas, and they could actually be found on the same flex as that charge port. But not only can parts be attached to the charge port flex, but they also can be plugged in to the charge port flex as well, such as the Taptic engine and the loudspeaker. A lot of times they are actually plugged in, attached, or connected to the charge port in some way. So some things you may experience when a charge port goes bad. Number one would be not charging. A device may not be pulling in an electrical current, meaning it's not charging. This can be caused by a damaged charge port or other issues. We talked a little bit about data transfer. What this really relates to is connectivity issues. If you can't connect your device to a computer through the charge port, it's not working. One of the issues could be the charge port itself. You'll have to connect it to iTunes or other softwares, maybe use a diagnostic software. All of these things require a functioning charge port in order to connect to the device itself. Another issue you may come across is dust or debris buildup. Oftentimes the device is actually left in pockets or purses and it's exposed to a lot of different debris like lint that can fill up a charge port very easily. Many times cleaning out the charge port carefully will fix the problem. So let's kind of expand on that a little bit and how you actually should properly remove debris from your charge port if it's there. To remove the debris, you want to have a couple of things. Number one, you want to make sure that the device is off. This way there is no chance of you shorting anything out. There's no electrical current or anything like that. Another thing you want to do is grab a really bright light so that you can actually look inside the charge port and confirm that there is a dust or debris buildup. When you're trying to clean it out, we recommend that you use a wooden toothpick or a soft bristle brush. The biggest thing I want you to know is that you should never use metal. In this image below, they're using some metal tweezers to scrape out the charge port. This can be damaging to the pins and other things within the device, so we want to avoid using metal at all costs. Manufacturers do have some recommendations because of how common this issue is. So just some of those recommendations from manufacturers would be to only use soft lint-free cloth. Don't use abrasive cloths, towels, paper towels, or things like that. You want to avoid excessive wiping. This could cause damage as well. You want to ensure that you unplug all external power sources, devices, and cables. So we want to make sure it is turned off, it's not connected to anything, and it is functioning like that. You want to make sure you keep liquids away from this product unless otherwise noted for specific products. So you don't want to put any water or anything down into that port to try to clean it out. You want to avoid liquids as much as possible. You don't want to get any moisture into openings, which kind of ties into the previous. Don't use aerosol sprays and bleaches because this can also be damaging to the device and the port. Do not use metal. You should only use a soft brush or a toothpick. A toothpick is ideal because it is wooden and it's not super strong. It's not going to destroy anything, but it's enough to be able to clean out the debris. So how exactly do we test the charge port? Well, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Some of the most common ways would be using an amp meter. User complaints. So if somebody is complaining about their charge port itself, how it's charging their devices, those types of things, then you may go ahead and start investigating whether or not the charge port is damaged and needs to be replaced. Maybe you have knowledge of issues. Maybe during your intake process you discovered that it wasn't taking a charge, or maybe you just know that there's something wrong with the charge port because of something else. This is just what we consider a knowledge of the issue. Another thing would be diagnostic software. If you use something that you plug the device in to tell you what is wrong with the device, it will a lot of times have issues connecting to it, or it will tell you that there's issues with the charge port. Real quick, I just want to expand on an amp meter in case you are unaware. An amp meter actually will test how many amps a device is pulling in. Typically, you should get a reading between 0.20 and 2.00 A on these meters. If the reading is below 0.20, you may have an issue with your charge port, battery, or motherboard, and you need to investigate that a little bit further to determine if you need to do something about that. Depending on the device that you're working with, your repair may be a little bit different because you may have a specific type of charge port you are working with. So over the next few slides, we're going to kind of take a look at some different charge port replacements that are out there. These include the charge port flex, a soldered charge port, and a daughter board with a charge port on it. So the first thing we're going to look at is the charge port flex. One common type of the charge port is this flex. This means that the charge port is actually on a flex of some sort. You see these in a lot of different types of devices, from Samsungs to iPhones. You'll find that there is a flex in there that has the charge port on there. When it's on a flex like this, a lot of times it will have other parts attached, such as mics on that particular charge port. The next one I want to talk about is a soldered charge port. This is another option, and it takes soldering or micro-soldering skills to repair it. Typically, a soldered charge port is by itself, meaning it doesn't have anything like a mic attached to it. You also may find part options for devices that are both soldered and or a flex option. Choose the option with the flex unless you're able to do the soldering work it requires. A lot of times they will even say on there that soldering is required for this part, so just kind of pay attention to what you're looking at on there to make sure you're getting the appropriate piece of equipment that you need. The next thing to discuss would be a daughter board. So a board that has components like a motherboard but typically can be replaced is considered a daughter board. So the motherboard is something that you can't replace because if you replace that, you're changing the IMEI, you're changing the device, it's not the same device anymore. But the daughter board is not like that. The daughter board typically is something that can be replaced simply, so you just can go ahead and take it out and put a new one in. This type of charge port connects with a flex that plugs into the main system board, motherboard, and the actual daughter board itself, and that flex will run between the two to communicate. This is a lot of times found in different devices, and you can go ahead and just replace these most of the time. The last thing I want to touch on is wireless charging pads. This part is actually where it receives the wireless charge and then it pushes it through to the battery. It may also have other parts attached to it, such as power buttons, like you see in this image above, but not always. This is not necessarily something that we would consider a charge port, but it is a charging pad, so we did want to touch on that a little bit. So I hope this helps you understand charge ports a little bit better, what you may need to do for some fixes, and what you are looking at when you're looking at different charge ports.